Thank you. I'd much like to start by thanking everyone for allowing me to be here. Being thousands of miles away from home and seeing so many passionate people is something that really is heartening to see. I'd like to thank both the Martin Broderick Society, the U.S. Embassy, as well as the conference organizers. John, you put an incredible amount of work. Nalini, Margaret, and everyone else who's had a hand in this. I really appreciate your incredible efforts and the chance to be here. So for those of you who don't know me, or haven't met me in person before, my name is Dalton, and I'm the Dark Sky Places Program Manager at IDA. For those of you who've only emailed me, this is what I actually look like, so we will be able to see each other in person later. But basically my talk today is going to be pretty targeted, specifically towards the current status and potential future directions for dark sky places within the context of New Zealand broadly. So first off, I'm going to just basically give a little bit of a background. Although many of you are familiar with the International Dark Sky Places program, I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation for those of you who may not be as familiar. So overall, the Dark Sky Places program was founded in 1999, as Ruskin mentioned, with the designation of Flagstaff, Arizona as a dark sky community. Since then, we've expanded and created new categories. So there's currently 6 categories, of which I'll explain, that broadly cover 2 areas. First off being basically, I'll explain that next slide, but essentially the main goal of the program is to support IDA's efforts to preserve and protect the natural nighttime environment. There's actually 20 countries who have sites currently within our program. Those sites go all the way across the world, from Namibia to Taiwan to New Zealand to the United States to Japan and many other contexts. Currently, the recent highlights we've had within the program is within the last committee meeting, we actually officially have certified 3 new dark sky reserves. Ruskin mentioned Cranbourne Chase in the UK. We also certified Australia's first reserve. So Australia is getting more on board with this as time goes on. And additionally, we certified another large reserve in the south of France. Additionally, we certified the first urban night sky place, which is a designation which was just announced last year, which aims to recognize places in light-polluted environments that are less than the size of an entire community that take exceptional efforts to promote and protect the natural nighttime sky. So basically, the IDSP program is basically branched into 2 sides, the first of which I would categorize as dark sky conservation, which Ruskin mentioned under our strategic goals. And essentially, the focus on this part of the program is to protect and preserve the night sky in the world's darkest places. Basically, there's many ways that we do this. Some of the basic tenets of this program are basically requiring outdoor lighting policy adoption that specifies lighting design and warranting criteria. So asking, is lighting needed? And if lighting is needed, basically specifying certain criteria such as full shielding, eliminating blue light, looking at lighting levels, and so forth. Furthermore, lighting retrofitting and design is a critical part of this process. For places to achieve certification in the dark sky conservation kind of realm, being parks, reserves, and sanctuaries, there's a minimum percentage of the lighting within each place that is required to be compliant with the adopted plan before each place is brought into the program. Additionally, education and outreach are huge and critical aspects of this designation. Places that are designated in this realm are required to do regular public outreach and education efforts. As Ruskin mentioned, one of the biggest issues we face is public lack of awareness of this issue, so these places help to inspire and also to educate people in that manner. And finally, continued monitoring, basically to establish at the beginning, but then also to see over time how the changes affect each place. So these constitute parks, reserves, and sanctuaries. And our other half of the program is essentially lighting where we work and live, which Ruskin mentioned as well. And the focus here is to encourage and reduce light pollution within the worldwide built environment. So these are places that aren't necessarily quote-unquote dark, but are places that take all of the essentially best practices in terms of lighting design, policy, and outreach in order to facilitate a much more effective and efficient use of lighting within the built environment. These types of places have really similar requirements for parks and our protected conservation program lands. However, the only difference, as I mentioned, is basically the lack of a minimum sky quality requirement within this half of our program. These place types include dark sky communities, urban night sky places, and developments of distinction. So just before I go into kind of future, I'm going to basically recap to everyone who is familiar basically the current status of dark sky places in New Zealand, of which there are 3. We are all currently in the first one, which has ever been designated, which is the Iraqi-Mackenzie International Dark Sky Reserve. Designated in 2012, it's 4,367 square kilometers, which protects and preserves the fantastic night skies seen in the Mackenzie Basin and surrounding areas. So this area, which has played gracious host to all of us, and which I'm thankful for, is New Zealand's first dark sky place. New Zealand's second dark sky place is the Aotearoa Great Barrier Island International Dark Sky Sanctuary. That was designated in 2017. It comprises roughly 285 square kilometers, and it's the first sanctuary designated in New Zealand and second place designated in New Zealand. And then finally, the third and most recent designation in New Zealand has been Stewart Island Rakiura International Dark Sky Sanctuary. So Stewart Island just to the south of the South Island. The sanctuary there comprises roughly 1,750 square kilometers, and it was just designated this year. So that's the most recent designation within New Zealand. But aside from the current designations, I would say that overall, for the size of New Zealand, the current interest in the program, being a worldwide program and managing applications from across the world, of somewhere of New Zealand's population base and relative size geographically, there are, I believe, more active applications for dark sky places in New Zealand than anywhere else in the world of a comparable size, which is very incredible to see. As you can see here, this is a great map that's been provided by Nalani Brita. She's done great work. You can see that these places that are interested are notated in these blue stars. So these places that are interested include a potential reserve in the South Wairarapa, a park in Waiiti, the communities of Dunedin and Naseby, among many others. So these potentially interested places cover a broad geographic scope as well as a broad scope of place type designations within New Zealand. And of these are solely representative of places that have formally started the process and contacted us having interest. This is not necessarily representative of everywhere that has interest overall or has started the process but not contacted us. So this is showing the incredible energy behind dark sky preservation and designation within the country of New Zealand, and potentially going forward how these sites may help to support overall the goal of a dark sky nation. So future opportunities for New Zealand, as I see it within the Dark Sky Places program specifically, are the ongoing IDSP designations that I showed in the previous page. Some of them are actually pretty far along and may be able to receive designation within the next few months. Others are earlier along in the process. But overall, I do imagine a continued increase in awareness and interest as new sites continue to come into the program. Furthermore, another thing we're looking at potentially in the future, which a lot of potential sites in New Zealand have come up against, is the NZTA standards for LED lighting, and potentially revising those to meet goals of reducing blue light in the future, and working towards that, because they have granted certain exemptions, but basically having that on a more systemic level would be fantastic for the country of New Zealand as a whole. Additionally, the Dark Sky Nation designation, which John mentioned, I think that New Zealand, in terms of places in the world, is very well poised in terms of a country to potentially become the first Dark Sky Nation ever designated through the Dark Sky Places program. So I think that's something that's very incredible. It will not be a fast, short-term thing, but it will be an ongoing process. But I think it's something that New Zealand, if I had to put a bet on anywhere, I think that New Zealand would probably, be the most promising place that I've seen personally. And then finally, just overall, I mean, New Zealand is a worldwide thought leader already, and I imagine that as New Zealand continues to embrace the concept of dark skies, that will continue. Very often, I actually point people from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, from North America to look to see what New Zealand's doing as an example. New Zealand has done such great work, both in terms of the grassroots nature of the recognition of dark skies, as well as the general promotion of dark skies and increasing community awareness through both education, through outreach, through connection, and through designations, that it's really a model that actually points people throughout the world to. So I think that I'd like to give a great round of thanks to everyone in New Zealand for the great work they've done currently, and I imagine that hopefully New Zealand is able to continue in that manner. So if you want more information, I'm actually going to be giving 15 unique individual meetings, but otherwise I'm here around the entire conference. You can come talk to me. I don't usually bite, it's fine. But basically everyone, I'm very happy to talk to you if you're interested in potentially pursuing a designation for a unique site, or if you're currently a site manager and have specific questions, I would love to talk to you. Additionally, if you want to talk with me after this meeting, I also have my office phone number, which you will not be able to reach me by for the next 2 weeks, but you can reach me in the future. My email, as well as my Skype username. And if you're feeling extremely old school, you can also mail me in Tucson. I've actually had an applicant last month. Instead of digitally sending me their materials, which almost everyone does, they physically mailed me a 60-page application via snail mail, which was, I think, a first in my nearly 2 years managing the program. So it is possible, though. Again, I would just like to thank everyone here, and I would open the floor to potential questions that you all may have. So thank you very much.
So we have about 5 minutes for questions, 2 or 3. Any questions for Adam? Can you turn the lights on, please?
Hi, my name is Richards. A couple of years ago, I investigated changing the area around Kaikoura as a dark sky park categories to go with the marine park and other aspects. But the one question people couldn't answer for me was light pollution on the horizon. If that impacts the actual accreditation for the region. As you can see, Dalton, Nelson and Christchurch from Kaikoura.
Yes, that's a good question. So overall, our requirement in terms of our places that have a sky quality requirement, it is relatively, we do have basically a strict cutoff in terms of, we're looking at magnitudes for our second cutoff in the zenith, basically. So that's basically measuring directly overhead. It has to at least be roughly Bordeaux class 3 or 4 at 21.2 magnitudes in arc second. But additionally, we do require all sky photography to essentially look at the presence of light domes and then overall night sky experience, because the readings overhead aren't going to tell us that. So essentially, we have seen situations where there has been fairly dark readings overhead, but there's been very prominent light domes, and that can factor into the application, but the presence of light domes solely does not disqualify you from.
They were pretty long,
Yes.
it was low cloud, so it was reflecting off the cloud.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so that wouldn't necessarily preclude you from designation
I
necessarily.
feel like it takes the more shots, no cloud in the horizon. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes? Well, you're next. First.
A bit of a tactical question. I come from the Tasman district at the top of the south. The Waiheke area is one of the areas that interested. It's quite a small area, and I worry that councils, the Tasman District Council, which covers a vast area of a lot of dark skies, will go, well, we've done our bit now. Is it better to get a thin end of the wedge in there and then drive it home, or go big right from the start?
And I think that's something that's, there's not a great universal answer to that. Basically, I think what I advise people is to consult with the community early and often throughout the process, because sometimes, I mean, you can propose something really big and the community goes for it and then they just really embrace it. That's kind of been seen in Mackenzie here. Like, that's a great classic example of that happening. Whereas in other locations, people have started big, but owing to opposition in certain areas, they basically were forced to exclude an area, or the project was scuttled overall. So I think that I would advise to probably think big and think regionally, as that's going to be your biggest impact. But if that is not possible owing to socio-political circumstances, I would then generally advise to potentially scale down with the hope that if something is designated and people see the benefits, that they're able to eventually achieve that larger scale. But I would generally advise to start larger as opposed to starting at a micro scale and hoping to build up, with then the potential to change in that way.
Let's have one more question from Pedro and Wade here.
Could you give more explanation about the dark sky nation requirements? It's so significant.
Yeah. So it is very significant, and this is going to be something that we're going to have specific sessions on later, so I'll just give a quick overview right now. So basically the requirements that we're looking at, we basically realized that the dark sky nation is very difficult to categorically have a one-size-fits-all model. So basically what we're looking at is different options for countries in different social and economic circumstances. So for a developed country like New Zealand, basically what we would envision is a host of options of things you could accomplish, basically, which include national legislation passed, which addresses certain elements of outdoor lighting, looking at standards through different agencies, having a certain percentage of land protected as dark sky places, or just protected via ordinances, having public education outreach, whether that be through school curriculum or through astronomy groups or programming,